One of the ways you can make your documents look more professional is to understand how to use indents and tabs. In this video, I show you how easy it is to add this type of polish to your own documents. On the screen I have a simple letter. It looks rather plain, however, which makes it unimpressive and difficult to read. By adjusting indents and tabs, I can remedy this situation. If you want an easy way to work with indents and tabs, it's helpful to display the ruler. To do this, jump over to the View tab of the ribbon and make sure that the ruler checkbox is selected. Notice that the ruler now appears just above the document itself and just below the Ribbon tab up at the top. We'll be doing a lot of work with this ruler, which is why it's important to display it. Notice that this letter has several paragraphs. When there is no vertical space between paragraphs, the normal way to make them more identifiable is to add a first line indent to each of them. One way to do this is to place the insertion point at the beginning of a paragraph and then press the Tab key. Not only is the first line indented, but this marker on the ruler jumped over by 1/2 of an inch. There are 4 markers always visible on the ruler. This marker is the first line indent marker. That's why it jumped over by 1/2 of an inch, because pressing Tab changed that first line indent. This marker is the hanging indent marker. Just below that is a small marker that's easy to miss. This is the left indent marker. Finally, over at the right side of the ruler is the right indent marker. The easiest way to see how these markers behave is to simply play with them a bit. You can click on any of the markers and drag them to where you want them. Word immediately shows you in your document how your text is affected. For instance, if I want a hanging indent for this paragraph, I can click on the hanging indent marker and drag it to get just the look that I want. A hanging indent, as you can tell, affects all of the lines in a paragraph except the very first line. Everything I've done so far has affected just the one paragraph where the insertion point is located. I'm going to reset the paragraphs back to their normal indentation by pressing Control Q. And then I'm going to go down to this paragraph and do the same thing, Control Q, to set them back to the way that they are by default. Now, if I want to affect all the paragraphs in the body of my letter, all I need to do is select all of those paragraphs. Then I can use the ruler controls to make indentation adjustments just like I want. In this case, I'm going to make a first line indent of 1/4 inch. Indents are a good way to keep things lined up in your document, but they cannot be used for all of your alignment needs. For instance, notice this information in the middle of my letter. It would be nice if the date shown after each name was aligned. Well, I could try to do this by adding spaces before each date, but lining things up that way is really difficult and it's prone to error. A better approach is to use tabs. If I put the insertion point just before a date, and then I click on the Tab button one time, notice that the date is moved over to the right just a bit. Each time I press the Tab key, the date moves to the right by 1/2 an inch. That's because the default tab stops in a document are all set to 1/2 an inch. Using tab stops, it's much easier to align text in this way. Now, when you start working with tabs, it's helpful to see where they are. This is where the Show Hide tool on the Home tab of the ribbon comes in handy. Turn on the tool, and you can see all the non-printing characters that appear within your document. Notice that the tabs show up as little arrows. Note as well that spaces show up as little dots. This can be very helpful to see because if you have a space after a tab, it can throw off your alignment efforts. For instance, if I go down to this date right here, and I go right after that Z character, and I press Tab twice, notice that it's still not lined up with the date above it. That's because of that space that's in there. And when you turn on Show Hide, you can see those spaces and tabs very easily within your document. You can delete spaces or tabs by placing the insertion point after the character and then pressing the backspace key. This is the same way that you would delete any other character within your document. Using tabs in this manner works pretty well, but Word allows you even more control if you set your own tab stops. Tab stops tell Word both where and how to align the text that follows a tab character. On the left side of the document, just above the vertical ruler, is the ruler control selector. If you click it, Word cycles through 7 different control characters that you can place on the ruler. These controls include 5 types of tab stops, the first line indent, and a hanging indent. You can hover the mouse over a control, and you'll be able to see what that control means if you place it on the ruler. Because I'm trying to align dates, I'm going to select all of these paragraphs down here, and then I'm going to make sure that this control up here is set to be a right tab, like it is right now. Then I'm going to click on the bottom edge of the ruler where I want that tab to appear. So let's say we wanted it just before 3 inches. We're going to click right here and notice that it placed that control right there within the document. I can click on it and drag it to where I want it to be if I want it to be at a different location. Notice as well what happened down within the text. The tabs took me over to that tab stop right there. That first tab did that, but I've got 2 tabs on each of these first 2 lines. So if I place the insertion point there and press backspace, you can see that it brings back that date so that it's right aligned with that tab stop that I set a minute ago. Now I'm going to delete a tab stop on the second line as well. And I can set tabs stops for each of these other ones just by clicking on the tab character after I put the insertion point just before that date. And now all of my dates are aligned professionally looking within my document. Again, at this point, I can go ahead and select all of these paragraphs. And if I want to, I can indent the line just a little bit so that that list is indented. And now I can adjust the tab stop by clicking on the tab stop and dragging it to the left just a little bit until it looks just like I want it to look within my document. My letter looks a lot better now. Having everything indented and lined up properly gives it a more professional and polished appearance. I hope that you found this video helpful. If you did, well, you might consider signing up for my Word Tips newsletter. Every weekly issue is free, and it includes great tips that you can put to work right away. Information is in the notes just below this video. Thanks for spending a few minutes with me today.